That's good, yeah. Hi, everyone. Happy Saturday. My name is Cersei Wallace, and I am moderating the panel today about an honest discussion around cannabis and physical activity. Is cannabis a performance enhancer? As we know, it elevates in many ways creatively, but it also has anti-inflammation properties and is showing promise in traumatic brain injury and recovery. The World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, just adapted its regulations for testing in the Olympics as topicals and tinctures are becoming regular additions in athletes' lives. This panel is committed to an honest discussion around cannabis and physical activity. Today we have three amazing athletes. Bob Burnquist here, who I've known for quite a long time, is president of, yes. He's possibly one of skateboarding's most decorated athletes. How many medals do you have, Bob? 30. He's an innovator, and he's also an investor in the cannabis industry with his soon-to-be launched brand. He's also president of the Brazilian Confederation of Skateboarding, and works with the national governance of skateboarding in Brazil and for the Olympics. Next to him is Travis Rice, who is arguably one of the greatest snowboarders of all time. I can say that. He's my client. He is a diverse and adventurous explorer and an incredible filmmaker known for films such as The Art of Flight and Depth Perception. He's also an investor in my brand, We Are Hot Knife. And then we have Mark Willers, who's former double Olympian in BMX racing. During his career, he was using sleeping pills and opiates prescribed by his doctors to ease pain and insomnia, and upon retirement started growing his own medicine, and is involved in an organization called Athletes for Care, which is by athletes for athletes around education and understanding of cannabis consumption. So the first question that I have, and I'm going to start with you, Bob, is, with the shift of CBD off the list of banned substances with WADA this year in preparation for 2020 in Tokyo, Bob, can you share with us what has changed at the Olympic level, and do you expect there will be any challenges with skateboarders' inclusion in 2020?
Well, good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, I mean. Coming in from Brazil yesterday, and I've been doing a lot of this back and forth since I became the president of the Brazilian Confederation of Skateboarding. It wasn't something I planned out, and it just happened to land on my lap, and now it's funny because it's, you know, the Olympics is obviously a huge event, and skateboarding survives without it, and the fact that it's in there, you know, it's great, and we see that there's a big opportunity to grow skateboarding. I mean, I see it as an opportunity to build more parks and get skateboarding out there, and obviously more investment into skateboarding. And it does come with that particular issue that we never really had to deal with, which is to pee in a cup, right? To have to go out there and see what we have going on. And for the most part, you know, what you find is THC. You know, skateboarders don't really, it's hard to really go into the whole the other side of drugs or performance enhancing drugs, and because it's not really needed. I think it's more of a creative, and it's just something you do out of, you know, trying to help yourself deal with pain. That's how I always dealt with pain, and it's not a flag I flew because it wasn't the time, and it seems like, you know, with CBD coming on, you know, as a nice, pretty brother to be able to put up front, and I think it's the time to fly that flag. With the Olympics, it's going to be an issue with, we already had, you know, in Brazil, as soon as we signed up with the Brazilian Olympic Committee, we had one of our guys, Pedro Barros, get caught with THC. You know, and it was a big thing. Obviously, people were like, well, now, you know, it's a doping situation. I had to come on to the argument of like, okay, so now what, right? So I feel like we're going to have to do a lot of educating, and the fact that CBD is off is great. But a lot of skateboarders, you know, dealing with pain, it's a lot better to deal with it. And you know, at least for me, I always had a better time with the THC combination other than the harder drugs, right? I mean, if you have if you break a bone, or if you got a bone sticking out, yeah, I don't mind, getting some little bit more potency on what I get for as a pain medication. But it's the after the fact. It's the dealing with the chronic side. You don't want to deal with the chronic pain with an addictive substance. So, that's, I think, the push. So the Olympics, it's all about education, because obviously WADA does not recognize THC in competition. So you can test positive outside of competition. They can come to your training facility or whatever, and if you get caught with THC, it doesn't matter. But if within competition, it's illegal now, right? So I think that it's affecting the situation, because it's the better, as a skateboarder and as the president of Brazilian Confederation, I would actually recommend all my skateboarders and all the guys to handle pain with THC and CBD. But if you want to compete in the Olympics, right now, as it stands, just don't do it within competition. It's just like, it just is what it is until we get that flipped. But that's the situation we're in, and it's much better to deal with it that way than obviously all the opioids. It's like we've lost some people, a lot of people, and people, it's a silent killer. Really, you don't really realize it. You don't think people are even using it, and then all of a sudden they're gone. So it's something that I think it's powerful enough, and hopefully the Olympics can, or not the Olympics because it's not them, WADA and USADA, and which follows WADA. So every year you get to apply and maybe hopefully get a substance on or off the list. So I'm still hoping that by 2020 THC is off the list. So as it stands, it's still on. So we just you gotta keep fighting the good fight.
Okay, so my next question starts with you, Mark. I'm just wondering, action sports has always carried a stigma and as being a stoner culture. Given that all three of you can speak to this, given that you're all action sports athletes, how has that stereotype affected you and your career?
I had the benefit of retiring from sport before I took on this industry. And it was an eye-opener to what's going on. I realized soon after that I wasn't a stoner, and it was kind of confusing to be told that you are a stoner, but at the same time you can't use it because it's a performance-enhancing drug. So am I stoned, or am I on the Russian doping program kind of thing? And it allows for athletes to, we can be up here and we can speak about it and we can help promote to other athletes, because it has to start from the bottom up. It's not going to go from the top down, and it's just important that I stand up. And I've never been one to bite my tongue during my career, and so now that I've done the research and I understand what I'm talking about, that I'm willing to speak up and help change that stigma.
Trav?
Amen. Well, hey, I just want to say thanks to everyone coming out today, have this conversation. These two fine gentlemen on both sides of me. Cersei, thanks for having me. And just to touch on, it's really interesting to hear about the Olympic aspects, and I think my general thoughts with the Olympics, it's essentially, I think, very well summed up in the fact that like skateboarding, these kind of alternative lifestyle sports don't need the Olympics, but the Olympics absolutely needs these sports. And so I'm curious to track how things continue to move into the future with what Bob was speaking to. As far as stigmas placed on, I guess, what we do, or being a snowboarder, I think the classic stoner stigma is pretty accurate, accurately portrayed by individuals within that. However, to put any type of stereotype on any general group is obviously very short-sighted. I think that when when you start to break down the individualism within, just like any group, you have the whole spectrum. That's generally how it is. I know the stoner, and I also know the super motivated, very courageous thought leaders that are also in the same space that are friends and communicate back and forth all the time. I think that I wouldn't say that I've allowed that to be any type of hindrance to being able to do necessarily anything specific. I don't think it stopped me or really many people I know from still pursuing their goals and dreams and creativity. And I think if anything, it's something that there's a beautiful amount of creative freedom that comes with these adventure kind of lifestyle sports that almost I think give it room to be unique and a little bit outside of I think what's normal. And I think that's kind of what this bigger this whole summit is about, is kind of this new realm of outside of normal.
Yeah, it seems like one of the challenges that we're facing is, this is something, consumption has kind of been omnipresent, I think, in our lives as action sports athletes. And now with Olympic inclusion, we are met, and with cannabis kind of coming into the light and the end of prohibition, at least on the state level, there's all of this opportunity, but you're also kind of limited in terms of what you can talk about or what you can do for fear of reprisal from sponsorships or partners or perception of the public who has yet to kind of step into the light and understanding the real benefits of plant medicine.
Yeah, I think there's a time for stepping into that light. It took me a long time. I think I've smoked weed since I was 14 or 15, in Brazil, and for different reasons, and then you realize what it's good for, and then all of a sudden, I break my wrist and my foot at the same time, and I'm way far away, and there's no drugs, and this guy shows up with a big nug, and I smoke that, and it just kind of like, eases off that pain, and I'm going like, okay, this is great. Now I can actually make my way to the hospital and deal with all that. And then I was lucky enough that the strong pain medicine always gave me a hard time. I couldn't deal with it too much. So, I took it when I had to, acute. I got that bone sticking out first 3 days. I mean, you give me anything you can, but then after the fact, just kind of ease off. So I think that the stigma, the reality is like I'd rather deal with it that way. And at that time, I wouldn't carry that flag. I wouldn't say this. And, I had a lot of big, corporate sponsors, still do, but now it's okay. I can talk about it. But I think there are different ways to utilize it, and the stigma will stay until people realize, it's all about the studies, right? So on the federal level, it being on Schedule 1 keeps it from being studied further. I think that's the biggest thing. So the more we learn about it, we talk CBD, but I'm sure everyone in here knows that there's, so many more compounds in there that we don't understand, and for different reasons. And, maybe to get creative, you can use it for creativity, and you can use it for pain. And I find the THC CBD mix a lot better for creams. It just, as a muscle relaxer, it works a lot better. You got a big knot. I give it to my massage therapist. That knot's gone within the session. Where before it took like 3-4 sessions. When you need to get back out, and that's the way to go. I've done it all. So it's like, I broke my pinky one time, and I had to skate a contest on my foot, and it was just like the worst pain. And it was just like, okay, I would walk in limping into the medic, and he would give me that numb just on it would numb out my pinky. So CBD and THC wouldn't do anything there, right? So there's nothing I can do there. So I would numb that out to skate. But then after the fact, if I wanted to continue to perform, you can't perform on opioids. You can't take Vicodin and perform. There's no way. Yeah, you won't feel pain, but you'll get dizzy, and just can't really do it. So I would get off the drug, the heavy drug, and then feel a little bit of pain, because obviously you don't have to cruise around life being numb. I mean, it's okay to feel a little bit. So I would just do it that way, and then now I could skate. The CBD and the THC would allow me to skate, and I wouldn't get that dizzy. So we need to get those studies out, and if studies go into these huge, the way studies are done now, where you have these big companies, they come out with the studies, and all of a sudden they can shelve it, or buy this study and then keep it away. I think that we need to look into more on maybe even on the blockchain side, to maybe come up and fund a study where everyone owns it and you can't really shelve it. So it's just there's a lot of different things that you would think that need to be done so we can work off that stigma. And in a real way, because it's a real solution for handling, pain. I mean, we deal with it every day. It's there's not one time I skate that I don't feel pain, but I feel joy, and it overcomes all that. So that's why I'm passionate about using this the CBD door to open up and the conversation. So.
Mark and Travis, do you think that cannabis is a performing enhancing drug?
I don't think it's any more performance enhancing than any other supplements that I take. You get a kick out of your coffee, or if that's not enough, you'll have a few thousand milligrams more caffeine, and that's making you feel amazing. I don't think it's equivalent to vitamin C. It should be a daily supplement. You don't get withdrawals if you don't have it, but I think by being able to use it and coming off of other substances, then that's definitely going to enhance your performance. I can guarantee that if I could go back and do my career again on weed using cannabis, then it would have been light years different. But when you're forced to follow a certain protocol and take certain substances, that's just what you have to deal with.
Amen. I think cannabis is a tool. Really, it's a tool, and I have a lot of hope for where it's going, especially with standardizations and education around dosing. I think it being such a gray area with cannabis in my upbringing, naturally, when I was younger, used it, abused it. It was a substance. It's kind of similar to alcohol, where I see what happens here in the U.S. and there's this fine line at age 21, and not all families, but you see this classic scenario where you're not allowed to drink until you're 21. That's just how it is. And then kids go off to college, and you have binge drinking and crazy abuse of a substance versus a proper integration into someone's life of safe with their parents, getting a better understanding of what alcohol does and how to be responsible about it. And I think that it's going to be the same thing moving forward with cannabis, where it's been this hidden thing that and now it's coming into the light. And I think being able to use it as a tool, not something being used as escapism, but when it comes into athleticism and talking about the Olympics and people and athletes that are trying to optimize what they do, I think we're lucky enough to spend a lot of time trying to hack, if you will, ways to better recover, ways for the mental health and how to approach scenarios. And I think I think cannabis affects people differently. We all have our own relationship with it, and so it's there's no standardization, period.
No.
And so getting a sense and learning about what your relationship is to it and how to use it as a tool.
Everybody's DNA is different. Everyone's system is different and reacts differently to certain strains, certain products. So it's just, yeah, until we get the education coming through and the more research gets to the light, then we just have to play by the rules and hope that you don't lose your career when you test positive.
Yeah, as I just feel like, cannabis is more of a spiritual enhancement drug than it is really a sports or whatever. I mean, skateboarding is such a, to me, I'm sure that these guys can relate, but when you land something you've been trying for a long time, the whole reason why you keep doing it is because you want to get that feeling of something new, right? I mean, you just landed something new. Okay, how can I feel that again, right? And how can I feel that again and again? It's like every day. I mean, if I go out there and try to learn a new trick, it doesn't matter if no one's ever done it. It just matters that I haven't done it and I just did it, right? So in that way, cannabis can connect, and the creative aspect of it is incredible. It's just like I've learned so many tricks on cannabis. I mean, it's just like it makes you think differently. You just kind of go out there, and I just get a little bit more connected when I stretch, and you just get a lot more in tune with your body. When you work with your body all the time and you're getting hurt and you're trying to prevent yourself from getting hurt, I think the more that you have cannabis in you, the better. Whether it's for that inflammation that now we know about so if you're taking CBD, now we know that, if you're an MMA fighter and you're taking blows to your head, if you were having CBD maybe just on the vapor side like all day long, you're already kind of setting yourself up to when you go and fight, that the brain swelling, so that keeps that swelling from that. You go to the hospital, whatever situation it is, like anything that can help you get back, right? So in my case, it's like, I've had to skate with broken bones, and it's the worst possible feeling, but you kind of like, you just want to keep doing it because it's beyond, it's a lot more spiritual. I mean, learning tricks is like little prayers to me. It's like every time I learn something, it's just like, well, thank you. I was able to manifest that, and okay, on to the next thing and on to the next thing. So I think that's what it's more about than it is, like you mentioned, the coffee. I mean, it's like, that gets you going, and or guarana or any other plants, right? I mean, it's just like, and now you can mix them all, guarana with some CBD, with some depending on what you want to attack. And I think that's the beauty of this plant, and I feel like maybe what Travis was talking about, and the parents, and and having that conversation. We live in a world that, obviously kids and people don't really get. I mean, yeah, you can, you're there, your parents are telling you something, but you're really looking in social media, you're going, people outside of that circle are the ones that are kind of guiding you. And in a sense, that's one of the big reasons why I've always took that responsibility, that I know that what I do and what I say affects young minds or minds, right, in general. So if the parents aren't having that conversation, I'm happy to have that with them and for them, and bring that to light so that they don't feel so, hey, I can't smoke weed, but I can take Vicodin and drink alcohol, right? And it's just like, nah, man, forget that, just do this. And maybe you don't need to smoke it because actually, smoking your lungs isn't that great. Do it however you can, but like there are other ways that you can take THC and CBD and use it that way. So, so I think that's really the conversation is getting these guys and getting people outside of their limiting, there's a phone and there's info out there, and so.
That's a good segue to a question for you, Mark. Athletes for Care is dedicated to helping educate. What kind of messaging and resources do you guys have to help communicate with athletes of all walks of life and consumption methods and benefits?
Yeah, so Athletes for Care was started by former athletes, NHL players, NFL, MMA fighters, and an organisation to help push the research and education around cannabis use for athletes. They're pushing the NFL, the people in charge, to try and change their rules from the opioids and all that kind of stuff. They're a charitable organisation, and they're making big things, happen. Riley mentioned earlier that one of the Canadian companies is actually going to look into brain health with the NHL alumni up in Canada. And so when you've got the US government with a patent from 15 years ago or whatever it was saying that it's a neuroprotectant and has regenerative properties, you know, it's why are they holding that back from people that get knocked out daily? It could save, I mean, it will save lives, and instead of having to worry about taking something after the fact, it's better off to have that vitamin C in your system beforehand.
Bob, do you smoke and skate?
Are we recording?
Yeah, we are actually.
Yeah, I do. I have, and I've learned I don't know how many thousands of tricks, probably, you know, doing it that way. And you know, in the beginning, you know, it's like it's really about everyone has a certain tolerance level, you know, and I think that that's important. And there is also most people are aware of, but if you're going to smoke weed or if you're going to take cannabis and you're iffy about it and you don't trust it, and you're going to have a different experience, right? And if you're believing that it's going to help you and it's something that's you know, going to be positive for you, you're going to have a different experience. So that mental state is obviously very important. So, you know, it's not something I just go and recommend, okay, go smoke weed and your life's going to be better. Not quite like that, but just open yourself up to understanding a little more of how it can help you, you know. And if you do smoke, I mean, everyone has the right to, and you know, you can have a beer, you can have this. I mean, I'd recommend no alcohol, you know, actually, but it's, you know, we all do it, and you know, and if you do it in moderation, it's fine, you know. So, yeah, we happen to be stoners, really. The skateboarders are. It is about that, but I think you can break that, and I mean, there are doctors, you know, and I mean, I'm a pilot, so I don't smoke and fly, but it definitely.
That's good to know.
Yeah, it is something that, it doesn't mean that I, you know, that I smoke so much weed that I can't think, right? I think that stigma is gone. You know, the whole brain cell thing is just like, it's the scare tactic situation. So, but the short-term memory thing, yes, right? So I mean, it's a little harder for you to smoke and study, right? I mean, hopefully you won't. You know, it's just how you use it. You know, so.
I know at Hot Knife we celebrate the stigma, and some of the greatest days of my life snowboarding have been, you know, having a safety meeting in the trees and being with your friends and exploring the mountain together. It really brings you together. I think action sports as a whole really is a community, and cannabis has been such a part of that community, and also contributed to, I think, the kind of dynamic expression from tricks to exploration that have allowed for almost like a greater transformation of athletics into a spiritual or expansive experience. So it's nice to have that affirmed by.
Most definitely.
I just want to say one more thing before we move to subjects, but like when I was 13, I was prescribed Ritalin, ADHD, and took it for 3 or 4 years through school, and there's certain aspects that it helped me with, but I also think that it almost took me out and kept me from pursuing a career in snowboarding, you know, on technically speed. You know, I had zero empathy. I wasn't able to be creative, and doing you know, snowboarding or playing hockey or doing physical activity was very challenging. And I was finally, you know, I was able to get off of it right about the same time that I pursued starting a competitive career in snowboarding. And, you know, I look back at that, and it kind of really set a precedent for me in regards to, you know, the normals that the normal that we live in today with pharmaceuticals and prescription drugs, and the fact that, you know, naturopathy is not more, you know, in the conversation or at schools. That it's just, you know, you go to the hospital, you go to a doctor, and you get prescribed to make yourself better for what's sick. And I know I'm probably preaching to the choir, in here with a lot of people that are here at this New West. But I think plant medicine and opening up to the possibilities of how these tools can help people, help our kids, help myself currently. I think that's the important conversation.
Okay, I think we're going to save the rest of the time for questions. I think quite a few of you probably want to ask these guys some questions. Anyone?
Got one right here, sirs.
I think you guys kind of touched on it a bunch, but I think myself, I struggle with communicating with the close friends or the family on usage. You know, you have your habitual usage, you know, you have your medical side, and that's what I try to preach myself. But how do you explain, like, to the family? You know, I feel like I get a lot of questions. Oh, you smoke? Oh, you're using it again? Didn't you use it 5 times this? Yes, I did a lot of active sports this week, and I feel like I need it. But how do you communicate with the family?
Patiently, without defensiveness, and understanding that, create these like beliefs that we associate as like a part of our character. And I know for me personally, with parents, it's been a long, patient, empathetic conversation.
I can speak to it as a mother.
Yeah, do it.
I'm a regular consumer, and I actually, being involved in the cannabis business has been a really great opportunity for me to have self-forgiveness about my consumption. I've been really holistic in my life, and kind of had an inherent distrust for the Western medical establishment, which is clearly validated. But I have a 17-year-old and a 5-year-old daughter, and I do consume, and they know it. And for me, I just tell them it's my medicine. There's so many worse things that I could be doing, and it has had great healing benefits for me in my life. And I've just kind of reframed the way I communicate with them about its attributes, and talk to them like, humans, in hopes that they can understand that this is an adult thing, but it is medicine, and you don't consume it until you're of age and your brain is fully developed. And people self-medicate in all kinds of ways, and this particular medicine is from the earth, and it's the best thing for me.
When it comes to family, it's like you have, the exercise in that communication with your family. It's like, the way I look at it, it's just like my family is society, right? So my dad, I wouldn't, he went to school in Berkeley. I mean, you can tell me he never smoked, but whatever. It's going to be a lot harder. He has his back pain and all this stuff, and then for me to smoke a joint with him, right? But it's a lot easier for me to give him some CBD cream, maybe some CBD capsules. I think it's like the delivery is where it makes it for an easier conversation. And now there's so many different ways that you can have it. I gave him some cream that we grew and we did, and it had the THC and CBD. And he sat with that for like 3 months, and he kept talking about his pain, and I was just like, Dad, that cream. He's like, oh, I haven't used it yet. It was just like, well, I don't want to hear it then. So if you're either gonna try it, so he tried it, and he was just like, wow, that was great. That helped me out. And then I came at him with some capsules, and the capsule thing, he was a little iffy, but it was a lot better delivery. And he's, he just read up on it and was talking to neighbors, and then they have the conversation because it's happening, right? People, they're reading it, and then he's like, I'll take it. Next day he came to me, he's like, that was just, I had one of my best night's sleeps I've had in a long time. I didn't feel the pain, and he wanted more, and I got him some more, and now he's, he uses it, and he's on it. So I think that's how kind of like, it's a slow process, right? So you have to kind of like understand how to talk to people without, shooing them away, because you can be preachy, and you can just be like, hey man, just do it, you'll just, it's gonna be good for you. Or you can understand where they're coming from and try to put yourself in that position and then have that conversation. It's gonna be a better and probably more productive, and, find different ways. Maybe gummies for them, they're just like, well, that's, I don't know. But if it's a capsule, or if it's like, the vaporizer, you're still smoking, right? So maybe why not like an asthma pump inhaler, right? So then when you give it that medicinal feel, it comes across. And I think that that's what's happening a lot more. I feel like that needs to happen more and more, is just giving it a different type of delivery aspect, and it'll change, because the compound itself is amazing, right? I mean, people use it, they will feel the difference. So it's just getting them to use it for the first time, right? Getting them off drugs and onto the CBD and the plant-based medicine or supplements or whatever it is.
I was silent for the first 18 months or so after I started growing. Very close friends were the only ones that knew. And then after I was starting to understand the efficacy of the plant, I read more and more, and I started to know what I was talking about. And so if the conversation ever came up, then I was ready. I wasn't actually ready when my mum was walking through my new house and found a jar of oregano sitting on my bathroom counter, but within 3 questions later, she was more concerned about what my neighbour's pool looked like than the jar of weed sitting on my counter. I've been amazed at the lack of pushback I'm getting from both family, friends, and strangers. Ever since talking about it and posting on Instagram and stuff like that, every single response on the DMs I've got, they've all been positive, and it's more people wanting more information. We now have grandparents and really close friends who are taking it for cancers and tumors and all sorts of things. So until they're educated themselves, then they have no reason to try it. And so that's where we have a role to learn it ourselves, so we can help push it forward.
Very good.
Any other
Hi.
questions?
Yeah, over here. Hi. So you're talking about on personal levels, and I can totally relate to all those kinds of stories. I've done the same kind of things with a family and friend. But to really change perceptions of the, cannabis and where it can head as an industry, you talked about changing, like the statute of it, the stature of it federally. How do we get that to happen so that really is the break point for acceptance on that kind of scale,
That's a $1 trillion question.
Yeah,
there.
right? So where do we start even? Do you have any? Because these are great, ways to get people more comfortable on a
Yes.
personal level, but
Well, I think that, you don't go out there and you change the world on the personal level. Really, you change the world on your circle. You can reach. Maybe I have a bigger circle, right? But everyone has their circle, and if you all go out there, then it changes. But I really feel like that the seniors are the path, because they are the most intense voting. They really go out there and vote. They talk about it, and they're the ones that are going to change things, right? So well, I think that, well, count on me too. I'm going there. I'm getting there
right
soon.
back at you.
But that's what I feel like. I feel like, when I talk about my parents, my dad, I'm looking at, all the other seniors, and if they, and it's happening, right? Everywhere laws change. They're using it more and more, and it's changing the conversation. So that's what's going to change. I feel and I believe that it's going to be off, federal sooner than we think. But I think that's the path, because to us it's like it's preaching to the choir, like we know, all right? So.
so it still gets people.
Well, I think it's because. Well, yeah, it's education. It's all about
it's
education.
like statistics too, right? Like where crime goes down in neighborhoods that actually open a dispensary, and we're starting to get that data. So that's I think what'll ultimately create the shift. That and the tax dollars.
And on the recreational side, I think that there's a mix of what recreational and there's a psychological aspect. So you can say yeah, I'm just, recreating over here and smoking weed, but what you're really doing is actually enhancing your life, right? How you feel. So even the recreational can be medicinal. It's really just mixed in. So that's why I talk about it's all about education and how the delivery, is to get to be more inviting and be more of what what it's there to deliver. So that's how I kind of I like pushing it that way, because I feel like it's a little bit, it goes in easier on people.
Yeah, I think it's a really confusing, really confusing place, especially for athletes right now. Like I'm based in California, where you'd never know it's federally illegal, and so now that WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, has removed CBD from the banned substance list, you can't cultivate that in New Zealand. Like the hemp program and the cannabis program, they don't really exist. So how are individual countries going to allow international athletes with government-backed programs to travel the world and fly from New Zealand to stop in LA and get Uber to drop me off at the closest weed maps pop up, and then get an edible to go through to the next country and make sure I'm asleep for that flight? And it's like you don't know if you're getting a quality product with nothing bad in it, and it feels like we're definitely heading in the right direction. The momentum's going towards. I don't know if we'll get legalization in the next, well, not in the next election, but I think we'll certainly get some states rights. Hopefully by the end of the year would be nice.
There's recently a little girl that sued the federal government for not being able to visit her grandma out of state. Her grandma lived in a state where it was illegal, so she couldn't take her medicine. She had some bad seizures, and she just couldn't leave, and she sued the government. I mean, that's a lot more important than me traveling to skate and be able to take my THC, even though it is my right to. But I think that situations like that are like so much deeper, and it's all about that education and bringing those to light. When I heard that, I thought that was amazing. I mean, and it's just incredible that she would have to do that. But it just, it's visiting grandma. It's as simple as that, right? Just going out of state. So, let alone going out of the country. I mean, LAX now says that they won't prosecute. You can carry as much as, I don't know how many ounces, it doesn't matter, but where you're going to, you got to watch out.
That's a good segue to plug the new movie that just came out, Weed the People, which really gets into that, and you can see where you can see it theatrically or download it on Netflix on weedthepeoplemovie.com. But I urge everyone, I haven't seen it yet, but there was a panel here, and it really is about the resistance from the Western medical establishment, and I think what we can do to shift the conversation.
Growing up with my daughter, who was involved in action sports and the culture of, cannabis, getting high and so forth, I'm just curious, with this shift in focus to the medicinal aspects of cannabis, are you seeing any change in the conversation amongst your peers? Like, are your fellow athletes actually discussing the medical benefits, especially, like, for instance, the benefits of CBD for reversing CTE, concussion damage, and so forth?
I mean, I think that the conversation over the past, 5 years, especially, that I've had and I see happening at kind of all levels, is amazing compared to what it was before that. Before that, use of cannabis was, I think, more focused recreationally, but I think like Bob touched on, there was a lot of aspects of, even with that recreational use, of it being an enhancement for, ways that athletes go about it. People, so many different aspects, I guess. So I would say yes, the fact that there is now information, the fact that there is now conversations, I think it starts with the education, and I think it's gone. I mean, the paradigm, I think, is completely changed in 5 years.
I actually had a younger current athlete reach out after I went public about it, and he was just going in for shoulder surgery himself and was looking for alternatives outside of all the drugs he knew he was going to come home from the hospital with. And so, you know, he's dealing with a shoulder injury, but everybody else who's getting the concussion, they're all asking the questions. It's certainly, you know, I feel, I don't know if it's just because I'm biased, but I feel like it's the topic of everybody's conversation these days, in my opinion.
My experience with it is that, I mean, obviously people that know, but you would be surprised, people that know about THC that haven't heard about, or CBD, right? Or, you know, in Brazil, I was talking to some friends, and they know about, you know, they know about what THC is, and when I mention, oh, well, there's CBD, and there's CBG, and there's THCV, and they all, you know, and it's just like, huh? Right? I mean, and these are people that you would think would know. So in our group, there's a lot to learn. I mean, just think about people that are outside of that group. It's just, you know, there's really, and it's all about the education, you know. So the conversations with the younger generation, the older generation, you know, from the, you know, skateboarders, snowboarders, in our world, and, you know, in sports, and I mean, it is about how, what I like to really push is that, you know, you're in high school and you break your foot, you're going to go to the hospital, they're going to prescribe you opioids, right? I mean, why, right? That soon, that quick, when there are other ways. So it's really a systematic, because the doctors are pushing that, because they're, you know, they go to these drug summits, and he's like, hey, you've pushed, you sell much of these, you get the commissions. You know why, what's going on, right? But it's like, that to me is the hard part, is just getting people to understand, like, okay, take it, but take it for this period, right? Just be a little bit more educated about it. Yeah, because, you know, I know what pain is, and, you know, you want to get rid of it when it's like really high level pain. You don't want to feel that. But once that's gone, it's all about educating, okay, how to take it. It's not just about smoking weed, because you can do that if you want, but, you know, handle the post-traumatic, right, the post-op in this way. Stop by this, you know, don't go beyond the week, you know, don't keep, because then you go more, you like it, right? It's a little bit more, right? And then the hard part with that is that, you know, you get that kid, and then now he's addicted to it, and now the doctor stops prescribing it, and then now he has to get it on the black market, and if he has money, he'll get it. If he doesn't have money, he's gonna go to heroin. It's cheaper, and that's why you're getting all these overdoses. So it's, you know, and in sports, you're gonna get hurt. So if this is our solution, we're gonna lose these young people, a lot of them, you know, and we are.
Yeah, opiates really are the gateway drug.
Yeah, exactly. So I think so having that conversation, and, you know, and you know, talking about it in that way and bringing it to the public light, you know, now is the time. And it's like, I really like the Athlete for Care thing, because it's just, you know, that's, because they're going to look at, you know, they're going to look at us, because, I mean, I've broken the bones, we've all gotten hurt, so it's like, how do you deal with it? Well, I deal with it this way, you know.
I think that's one of the exciting things about cannabis, is it's almost a catalyst for people to be more self-empowered in their medicine. I saw a question over here.
Thanks for the question.
Oh.
Well, if I'm asked, I say it, right? I mean, there was a time in my life where I preached a lot, and you realize that you're just like, it's a lot better to lead by example. So instead of going out there, hey guys, hey, it's just like, this is what I do, right? And then, you know, when people ask me, because I'm an expert in pain, I guess, then, oh, this is how I deal with it. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's cool, I'll try that, you know, and instead of it being like this, you know, you make too much of a subject, right? It's just like, this is how I deal with it, right? And it's a lot better than this way, you know, so try that kind of thing.
I call the White House comment line at least once a week to say, take it off Schedule 1. That number is 202-456-1111.
You know, they
one
put
more time?
Thank you for that.
one more time, the number?
202-456-1111. Call them every week.
Nice.
Thanks.
I'm going to tell my dad. He's going to be one of the top callers. You know, CBD was on Schedule 1 for like a day or something they tried, you know. But yeah. If they took it off that quick, why can't they just take THC off that quick?
They only did. They only took off Epidiolex. So the FDA recently announced that Epidiolex, which is a treatment for a couple of epilepsies, as long as it's a CBD product past the FDA approved by FDA, then that's now off. It's now Schedule 5, but unfortunately not CBD entirely.
I want to thank you for being up there and sharing your experience. So with the resistance of Western medicine to acknowledge the benefit of cannabis, like where does one go to get advice about pain medicine or pain, the benefits
Management?
Management, correct, right. Like, do I go to my stoner friend and say, hey, what works for you? And again, everyone has different experience with cannabis. So what's the best resource to, really find out about this?
I would say your local dispensary, do some research and find out who are the best retailers who are, well educated and hosting educational forums. There's quite a few books. Bonnie Goldstein has one, Cannabis Revealed. She's an MD. I'm quite sure she lists resources for other doctors to talk to or access. But I would say, there are retailers who are really at the forefront of that and making sure that they're educating their consumers and helping them navigate the very complex layers of cannabis.
Yeah, I think the hard part with that is like going to a pharmacy and asking what the best medicine is. I mean, it's like the pharmacist is just, is there to kind of do that thing. You need the doctors, right, to tell you, and that's not there. And when you go to a hospital and you finally, you're off your operation and you can finally eat something, and then you go to the cafeteria and it's all horrible food, right? It's just almost like they want to keep you in the hospital because it's just like, I want to go to the cafeteria and get like the best plant-based nutrition and supplements and organics. I mean, it makes sense, right? So when a system is like that, then what are you going to do, right? You kind of have to, in a way, you kind of do it on your own, and then you gather, and there's more and more studies. I think this year the amount of CBD studies, you're just off the hook. So I think that's right now you have more access. I mean, you got to push for more, and that's why I mentioned the blockchain, because I think that's like decentralized and trying to raise money for studies in that way, I think keeps it off the big power.
I think outside of walking next door into the other hall and looking around at the booths and seeing who looks legit and who's just faking it to make some money, and then you've got to take the research even further yourself. If you're just listening to people like us this whole time, then it's going to be just a different version of a message that's been drilled into people for the last decades. So you can only really guide people to certain so far, and then it's really on themselves to take it the next step.
Yeah, amen. I think, and then on top of that too, it's the aspect of the intentional amplification of how you use anything. I think it's something that with the FDA and doctors, pharmaceuticals, all of it, right? It's all so isolated. It doesn't bring in the whole conversation of mind, body, spirit, and how you use these drugs. I mean, look at the placebo effect. What is that? That's like your own intention. So.
Another thing, it must have been the weed talking, as I forgot to mention it. I actually had dinner with a guy last night who has a DNA company, so he takes your DNA and runs all your, runs all the medical stuff, and then he has a program set up that with specific terpenes and cannabinoids, and which will match your DNA to give you the best possible outcome. So for first-time users, they don't end up having a bad experience and eating too many cookies or something. I thought that was a really good idea.
Yeah, on that DNA sequencing thing, I mean, nowadays how you can sequence the DNA and take a few hours, and you got that huge machine or whatever. But as we've gotten more and more info on what I'm doing now, it's just like I didn't realize, but there's more than 1,400 plants discovered every year, like new plants, right, down in Brazil or wherever, and people and the guys are taking their own like mini DNA like sequencing, like where you kind of put the plant in there, you don't have to send it in, and it kind of loads on the database. And I mean, the more like things are kind of moving in a way now that it's all about information. So all of a sudden, a plant's discovered, and then it goes on the database, and it's this is great with this plant or this, and it's just like I think we're going into this new world of discovery, and it's plant-based, and I feel like cannabis is the queen. But there's so many that go together, the arnica and CBD, and for whatever reasons, right? So it's out there.
So yeah, first of all, thanks a lot, guys, for sharing your experience and opinions and such. So I'm a little bit, I kind of want to bring it back to the idea of cannabis as a performance-enhancing drug, I guess, in sports. And maybe get a little bit more into certain situations where cannabis may be good and might be not. Because I think you all touched a lot on, I guess, using it to recover from acute injuries, broken bones, and that kind of thing. And in that sense, I can see really clearly the benefits. And where I'm a little bit fuzzy, I guess, is sort of more in like a chronic use setting. Because I think a lot of the research coming out now about exercise, response to exercise, and adaptation to training and such seems to say that a lot of the beneficial effects of exercise and adaptation use a lot of these same inflammatory pathways. And so in that sense, inflammation might be kind of something that you want to initiate with a training stress. And so I'd just be interested to hear your opinions, kind of, maybe just touching on where you see maybe we kind of talked about the benefits of cannabis, but maybe if you guys have some things that you think it's maybe not good for, or something where it might actually be detrimental for performance.
Well, if I was a surfer, I would have a hard time putting smoke into my lungs to start. Maybe I'd take it a different way. And I'm a skateboarder, and it's not a triathlete where you just kind of like, you really need to push and push and push. So, it would be different for me, right? So I would rather also not put smoke into my lungs. And I used to smoke a lot more. I rarely smoke now, right? So, but I still take THC and CBD. So I try to eliminate what I felt was bad and that was affecting me in that sense because I'm asthmatic. So in that sense, right? So on the inflammation side, yeah, if you're working out to get big, if you're a bodybuilder or whatever, and you're trying to build muscle, maybe you don't want to keep that inflammation down, because that's the whole, the point. So I think it's like, that's now when we want to find out more and more, so that you know what exactly you're going to be doing, so that you can specifically, use, right? So that's kind of like how I feel, and on all the different strains. If I'm going to go skate the mega ramp and I'm competing, I don't really like to be high when I'm competing, because that nervousness, and I like when I'm home and I'm learning, and it's like it's more of a spiritual experience than I'm okay with it. When it goes to actual competition, and there's a lot of people, a lot of different energies, emotions, I keep it away, and I use breathing, and maybe, you know, it's different ways to use it. So I think that would be the negative aspect for me, but, you know. But if it's a best trick contest and it's a creative, then I'd be okay with it, you know, because it actually would open up my mind to trying different things. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a performance enhancer. I think it's a life enhancer. And to think about, you know, like Bob said, you know, for me, competition and competing and, you know, trying to be at my best or filming in the backcountry, and I never use it in those scenarios. So I think that kind of sums it up, my mental approach to it. And it goes back again to using it as a tool. You know, after a big day in the backcountry, you know, some small use of THC, being able to help with presence and being able to roll out, recover. I find that's more of how I use it as a life enhancer.
I think around that we're kind of far enough along now that for the inflammation aspect, like you can get different strains or different products that will not necessarily target inflammation and other things. I'd retired and before I really started smoking, and so I've never competed or high or never even rode high in my life, but everything else I do, I feel like I'm doing it better. So that kind of goes off of what Travis is saying, but yeah, I understand the inflammation. So how everyone's wanting to, you know, if you're wanting to be swollen after working out, and if that's the goal. So if you're taking something to stop the inflammation, then it's counterintuitive, and so it's just trying to find that right product that's not going to target that.
And I mean, if you're gonna take an Advil, Aleve, Tylenol, I mean, versus using, you know, a CBD of some sort, I mean, it's obvious. Like,
Yeah, if you take a bunch of Advil every day, your blood's going to thin out and it's not going to be good for you. But if you take THC and CBD every day, it's not going to really do anything. I mean, that's that side effect. And also, like, when you're done, say, a weekend of competition after skating, 5 days in a row for a long time, instead of getting home and relaxing by getting drunk, the next day you're going to have a harder time to recover and dehydration, all that stuff, because of drinking. So it's just like, well, then that relaxing drug would be THC, right? It would be the better choice, So it takes a while to manage, and it'll take different experiences. And I was like, I shouldn't have done that. Now I'm really miserable. Now I'm competing, and I'm like, okay, people. And it's just like, I think that it's being smart about that, and then using it as a tool.
Yeah, and the obvious negative aspects with, it's a substance, with abuse and escapism, and I mean, it's like anything.
Okay, thank you all for coming. Oh, I'm supposed to be done.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you.
But I'm sure you can come talk to them right now when we wrap up on the side. But thank you so much for coming and being here today and participating in this.
Thanks for having us, Cersei.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you.